Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Easy 11 Plus live lesson on poetry comprehension from me and from the yellow happy panda, whose text is strangely backwards. I wonder why. Anyway, enough waffling on from me. Let's get started. I should be having lots of wonderful chat messages coming in, but nothing is coming in through my software at all. So as far as I know, there is nobody watching. But let's hope that isn't the case. In fact, I'll just check on my phone where I should be able to see whether the thing is streaming. Yeah, it's definitely going out. I think it's definitely going out. Yeah, I'm out there. Let's just hope that you are as well. Right, anyway, let's get started with this. So we've got two difficult long questions here, and that's all. So we're just going to concentrate on those, how we structure some good answers, how we communicate our ideas, and how we understand a poem. So on that note, I'm going to begin just by reading the poem. Normally I don't do this, but the poem is so short that I can actually have a go at reading it aloud. I met a traveller from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear, My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away." I think I could have read that considerably better, but never mind, you can read it yourselves. Notice that almost all of the poem is in quotation marks from after the second word of the second line, right until the end, because this is all what was said by the traveller. And really the beginning is just a kind of framing device to introduce the traveller, the imaginary traveller's words. And it's such a short poem that I can put it all on the screen here, so I'm not going to need to flick between a writing screen and a reading screen. Marsh says, what does this poem convey? I'm going to leave that to you for a bit, because I think this is, if you mean what does it mean, what's it about, what does it describe, I think you should be able to work a lot of that out. Perhaps someone in the comments can explain. Let's pop into having a look at the question for a bit, and maybe I'll pop out again and give you a summary of what this is about in a bit if I'm feeling particularly generous. Question 3 is the first one we've got here, because these are extracts from a longer comprehension exercise from 11 Plus Lifeline. There are links in the video description if you want to find out more about 11 Plus Lifeline. It's where I sell a lot of my 11 Plus resources with solutions and blah blah blah. Anyway, what effects does the poet achieve by writing the phrase "nothing beside remains" in line 12 by itself as a very short 3-word sentence? Okay, let's think about this. Harley says in the comments, "This is such a hard comprehension. I had a really hard time trying to get something down before the lesson." Yeah, this is a really hard comprehension. This question style, you would not normally see this at 11 plus. Places you might see it. You might see it in some of the really challenging questions from a few independent schools. And I'm thinking of schools like Sevenoaks, for example, that set quite long extended questions. One school that has typically set horrifically difficult long poetry comprehensions is a London grammar school called St Olave's, and I've put its name in the title of this video because I think this will be relevant to people applying for that school. I can't tell you that they will have this style of thing next time around, but I can tell you that in a number of past years they've had difficult questions like this based on poems. Right, let's take a second to talk about the poem and what it's about. As someone asked a while ago, I wanted to give you time to think about it before I jumped in and said this poem is about this. So let's think about it. It starts off, I met a traveller from an antique land. Now, antique is a strange adjective to use there, but you know what an antique is, right? It's an old piece of furniture. So what do you think antique means? Do you think it means table? A table? Of course not. It means old, right? So you can work that out, or you can guess it with a lot of confidence. So a traveller from an ancient land, in other words, a land, in this case, as you're told from the poem, which is much of what you see there is are old buildings and substantially ruins, which is what this poem is about. And the traveller said, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Okay, you know what vast means. Trunkless might confuse you. But they're legs of stone standing in the desert, and they're just the legs. So that must mean that there's nothing above them. So what do you think trunkless means? It means without a body. Your trunk is your thorax and abdomen. To describe you in quite entomological terms, if you don't know that word, look it up. Entomological. Stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies. You may not know what a visage is, but whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command. So what is a visage? It must be a... must be a face, right? Must be from the context, from the features described on it. So there's a shattered, broken face lying near these legs. So now you get a sense of what this is. This is all about a smashed up old statue. A huge one because the legs were vast. So it's sculpture, well those passions read which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things. Okay, this is difficult, but the sculpture could understand human emotion and could carve it well onto this giant face. The hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. Okay, so this was a cruel and authoritative king, whom this sculpture nonetheless served by creating this work of art. And on the pedestal, these words appear. Again, you may not know what a pedestal is. It's actually the bit that a statue stands on, but you don't need to know that because the main thing is that there are words written somewhere on the statue. And if you can get that, it doesn't really matter what a pedestal is. So as I always say with reasoning and so on, don't get put off by some words that you don't know. You can almost always work around them intelligently and work out generally what's going on. These words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Okay, these are the words. Then it says, nothing beside remains. That clearly isn't part of the words. Use your brain, work that out. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. Okay, maybe this is the desert stretching out into the distance. Boundless might confuse you, but what do you think? What does it mean to have bounds on something? If you're out of bounds, where are you? You're somewhere you shouldn't be. Bounds are limits, so boundless means limitless, unlimited. Okay? Okay. Maha is... okay, you don't need to post it again because I've seen it now. This is why I've got the kind of slow mode on for comments, so that if people do want to post something more than once, they can't just bang, 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 post it loads of times. Okay, so the question is, what effects does the poet achieve by writing the phrase, nothing beside remains by itself, as a very short 3-word sentence? Boom, that was quick. Let's see what some of you have said, and then I'll go in and talk about it, because I can see you really want me to read out your answers. So Maha says, nothing beside remains, quotation marks please, means there are no surroundings. It adds a bit of info. It seems to be slightly formal, and many poets use it. Short sentences entice readers and they want to read further. Okay, so first thing you said, nothing beside remains means there are no surroundings. Agreed? Good start. Clear, accurate, to the point. It adds a bit of info. Yeah, but what? What does it tell us? What is the info? It seems to be slightly formal. I don't get that. I don't see what's formal about this, to be honest. It's a bit old-fashioned in English, but so is the whole poem. That's because it is, surprise, surprise, an old poem. The info at the top of the comprehension makes that clear. So I'm not convinced by that. I don't see what's formal about it, to be honest. Many poets use it. Many poets use what? Use this exact phrase? Really? I can't think of any other examples. I don't know what you're saying there. Short sentences entice readers and they want to read further. I agree with that. I think it can be a good point, but be careful. You need to say something specifically about what's happening in this poem. And everybody watching this is important. If anything you write in a comprehension answer is something that you could say about any text, pretty much. If you could say that about any text that uses a short sentence, then it isn't a good thing to write. You have to write something that could only really apply to this particular text. Otherwise, you aren't being specific enough and you're unlikely to get marks. So a really good try and a really good start. And I'm sorry if I seem negative and pointing out the negative things. You've been very brave putting your answer out there. So yeah, I think it's a good start there, but you need to develop in a way that analyses this poem a little bit more specifically. The other one, Sandeep says, I think short, snappy sentences Yes. Okay, so contrast. Oh, I see. You are talking about just this one. Fine. Contrast with long flowing sentences and make an effect which creates suspense. It makes the reader want to read on. You're saying something similar. Again, you haven't said anything about this particular poem. And I am not clear about where the suspense is here. I think you've said something that you would say about any short sentence, but forgive me if it sounds a little bit rude, I don't mean it to. I'm not sure you've really thought about what you mean. Because what is the suspense? The poet has written, nothing, what have they written? Nothing beside remains. That isn't a suspense point to me. I don't read that and think, oh, what didn't remain? No, I know what didn't remain. Nothing remained. Like, that's what they've said. There isn't really any suspense. It's actually, if anything, the opposite of suspense. It's kind of a full stop. Like, that's it. There's nothing else. Boom. Why am I saying boom today? I've got no idea. Haven't been any explosions happening outside my window. Who knows? Anyway, so not sure about the suspense point. Not actually sure about the making reader wants to read on point. Interesting. Always talk about the poem in front of you. Right, enough of what you've said, wonderful as it is, and thank you very much genuinely, Maha and Sandeep, for getting us started with some answers for me to comment on. Let's talk about coming up with our own answer. So, what effects does a poet create? Okay, so effect means things it makes the reader think and feel. Nothing beside remains. So let's start by looking at the poem and thinking about it. I'm not going to write lots of notes on the poem because, for a practical reason, because I squeezed it into this tiny box on the screen, there isn't really room for me to write notes. I can do some underlining, I guess. Let's underline nothing beside remains so we can find it easily. There we are. Top underlining, Robert. Very straight. Okay, anyway. Nothing beside... No. Okay. Nothing beside remains. Nothing beside what remains? Nothing beside all the things that have been described. The legs, the smashed face, and a pedestal with the words on it. That's all there is, and there's nothing else. Okay, it's a very simple statement. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, what is there? Just the sand, just the desert. So that's what's going on. So always start by just being clear in your mind about what it means, literally. Okay, even if you don't write that down, you need to know for yourself. So this is a very simple statement. We can say that. It's a very simple statement and there's no double meaning to it. There really is nothing else there. It's kind of like a full stop. So why the short sentence? Well, it's emphasizing that this traveller has very few words because there really is very little to describe. Now, okay, fine. But that's all a bit going around in circles and very obvious. Why does that matter in this poem? Now, this is where we're going to start developing some ideas that are pretty relevant to the next question we're going to look at. Priyanka, thank you so much. Written, your channel helps me so much, and then has written 10 smileys, I think. I appreciate every one of them. So people are still writing, it creates suspense. I don't buy that. I don't agree with you. And I am king here. I am Ozymandias of this channel. So that's my sneer of cold command. You will do as I say and stop telling me it creates suspense, because it doesn't. Okay, calm down, Robert. So we've got the great simplicity here, but let's go to think about why the simplicity. Well, this is in the context of this massive, amazing statue that isn't amazing anymore, because it's smashed up and most of it has disappeared and probably has been dissolved to sand or nicked or something. Someone's probably using a chunk of it to prop up their toilet door somewhere. So we just got the smashed face and a couple of legs and a lump of rock with some words on it. And that's all that's left. So rather than being this grand and imposing thing, it just seems kind of rather plain and ridiculous. Well, between all those things we said, we really do have enough to put an answer together. So it's a very simple statement. There really isn't anything else, and the very few words of the traveller, I'm glancing down because I did take a few notes before just so I wouldn't get completely stuck in my own waffle. The very few words that the traveller uses are because there really is very little to describe. Because rather than being grand and imposing, in fact the ruins seem really trivial, small and ridiculous. And that's plenty, I think, for 3 marks here, because it shows very full understanding. We focused on the what and the why, and we put it in the context of the meaning of the poem. And that's all you could possibly want, really, from an answer like this. Notice that the question says, what effect, with S in brackets. It doesn't say what effect, it doesn't say what effects. If it said what effects, you'd clearly need to talk about more than one effect. If it said what effect, you'd need to very clearly to focus on developing one idea really fully. So this is why you need to read questions in detail. This makes clear that you can either talk about one effect or about several effects. The main thing is that you do it well. As a sense, I'm really interested in what Rama's written, actually. I'm going to give a moment to looking at this. The short sentence, nothing beside remains, adds emphasis because it puts pressure on remains. Okay, so you mean it really emphasizes the word remains. Nothing beside remains, and the stop. Ooh. I'm not sure whether this is what you're saying, but I've just noticed something about this. What's your resting foot disappears off the screen. It also adds a sense that it means everything is broken. I think you mean this, and I think you mean something that I had not thought of. So yeah, many congratulations for that. Nothing beside remains means nothing else remains. However, it could also mean something else. That there is nothing beside remains. Remains, I read it as a verb. I think you're reading it as a noun. There's nothing beside, apart from, remains, just leftovers in the sand. I think there might be a little bit of ambiguity there, a little bit of, two sort of possible ways of reading this, and the way that it's a short sentence draws our attention to the word remains in exactly the way that you described. Ramakrishna, yes, you are the star of today's lesson, I think. That's a really good point. I wonder how we might work that in. Think about it. Maybe as we write it. Let's get on and start writing an answer to this. I'm impressed. There's some clever people watch this channel. Particularly about the people presenting it. I'll take refuge with the yellow panda. Right, I better write some stuff because we're quarter of an hour in and I haven't written anything yet. Okay, so this very... Oh, the joys of my handwriting. This very simple statement... It is going on the screen. I hate it when the worst thing is when this freezes and I'm just writing and then I look up and nothing's come out on the stream. Right, this very simple statement, reflects the fact that the traveller has little to say. Okay, I'll put traveller in quotation marks just so I'm clearly doing some quoting. It's a little bit cheeky because, I mean, it is a quote, right? It is a quote. It's in line 1, so why not? And it's always good to show the examiner that you're quoting. So get used to doing this. Just don't put them around words like "and." That would be silly. But traveller, that's absolutely fine. The traveller has little to say. Because there really is. Is to describe. Okay, there really is nothing else to describe. Rather than grand and imposing. And I could just say grand or imposing. It is a bit repetitive, but I'm making the point clear to the marker. Rather than grand and imposing, I've got an idea for a quote. Rather than grand and imposing works, the ruins seem... So I was going to write trivial, but I could also write just unimportant that means the same thing. And it's maybe, I'll write trivial, it's a better word, you should learn it. But if you don't know it, it basically means unimportant. The ruins seem trivial and ridiculous. Trivial also has other meanings. It can also mean, in some contexts, it can also mean really easy, really simple to do. And there are probably other implications as well. Anyway, that'll do. So what have we got here? This is definitely a 3-mark answer. This very simple statement reflects the fact that the traveller has little to say. There really is nothing else to describe. Rather than grand and imposing works, the ruins... I'm going to rewrite this actually to make it even clearer about why there's so little to say. Rather than grand and imposing works, we are only left with, I'm going to put a star in here. Right, if you do this, the key thing is it has to be completely clear to the marker where the stuff is going in and where else you've written it. Otherwise, you've got problems, okay? So here, this works absolutely fine. Rather than grand and imposing works, actually, I could probably fit this in the space. Never mind. What's left seems trivial and ridiculous. And that's going to be fine for 3 marks, okay? And we even got some short quotations thrown in there. What's Roblox written? It makes the reader curious as how the statues stand round and decay, and also gives statues and superiority. Nothing but may given the impression that nothing is superior. I'm afraid to say that doesn't quite nail it. And the reason is, I can say this to you because you're a regular viewer of the channel, so you've learned to deal with me by now. That doesn't do it. And the reason it doesn't do it is because you're talking about the meaning more than you're talking about the fact that the poet writes the phrase as a very short sentence. Okay? You need to explain why the fact the sentence is short and simple is relevant. So this answer does that. Okay? People stop arguing in the comments, please. Just I've got slow mode on, so even if someone's writing stuff that isn't relevant, they can't write it more than every 20 seconds. So you're going to survive. Just take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. If the comments annoy you, don't look at the comments. Top tip. This very simple statement reflects the fact that the traveller has little to say. Okay, we're clearly talking about the shortness, the simplicity. There really is nothing else to describe. Rather than grand and imposing works, what's left seems trivial and ridiculous. Now, I haven't included the fantastic idea from, oh no, who were you? I've forgotten who it was who had the brilliant idea. Feel free to remind me in the comments. Won't see it as boasting. I'd like to know. Because I think there's no need to make this more complicated than it has to be, even though your idea was fantastic. I'm not completely clear how we'd use it. I suppose nothing beside remains. Maybe something like this. Nothing beside remains creates ambiguity about whether remains is a verb or a noun saying that all that's left is wreckage, really emphasising how far this ruler, Ozymandias, has fallen from their former glory. How's that? Something like that. That would be your name is Pranav. Pranav, yeah. I'm not going to attempt to say your surname in case I get it horrifically wrong. So it was you who had the fantastic idea. Well done. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. That's the kind of way I might approach it if I was going to use your point. Might be a little simpler not to, but, I mean, your point, once you're writing for A-level or whatever, will be, even for GCSE, that is the sort of thing. Well done. Okay, onwards. Enough praising my viewers. I shouldn't be praising you. I should be undermining you so that you become dependent on my channel and on buying all my stuff. That would be a much better approach. So, you're all fools and I look down on you. I despise you. That's better. Okay, no more praise. By the way, talking of praise and exploiting my viewers and so on, if you like these lessons, if you think it's useful what I do here with these free 11 plus teachings and so on, please go and tell your friends and invite people to come along and watch the channel, because that's how more people who perhaps can't always afford expensive tuition and loads of resources and so on can still get access to 11 plus teaching and have a fair chance of getting into some good schools, which they might deserve to do. So yeah, anyway, please tell people about my channel, invite them along to come and watch a lesson, and then they'll realise that they aren't missing anything and probably not watch anymore, but it'd be great to see them once. Invite your friends. Here are some definitions of the word irony. I'm not sure what I was doing to send this exactly irony, it was more just silliness. Bruno says it looks rain. Robert, please ban the word Bruno and Encanto. Guys, stop being annoying. Just leave the chat for people who want to communicate things to me to do with the lesson, please, okay? You've had your fun. No more fun. Here are some definitions. I can't go banning words. I've got other things to do, like talking about this poem. Here are some definitions of the word irony. Something that has a different or opposite result from what is expected. Okay? So an ironic situation might be, for example, someone balances a bucket of water on top of a door in order to catch their teacher, but then they forget about it and walk through the door and it lands on them instead. That would be kind of ironic. A situation in which something was intended to have a particular result has the opposite or a very different result. You see? Just what I was talking about. A state of affairs or an event that seems deliberately contrary to what one expects. Okay, so deliberately. So now we're talking about, for example, a poet creating a situation that might be contrary to your expectations, if we're talking about this scenario, and is often wryly amusing as a result. In what ways is the scene described in this poem? Who would have thought this was going to come back to this poem somehow? An example of irony. Explain your answer clearly, supporting your points with evidence from the poem. Okay, now, I actually think this is an easier question than the last one. Even though it's a longer and more awkward and there are more marks involved and so on, I actually think once you've read the examples and you've got a clear enough sense of what irony is, you just kind of have to do it here. Because what is it that we just have to do? I'm looking forward to seeing some example answers in the comments if someone gets around to them. Well, look at all these examples. It's where something has a different result from what was expected. So you've got what was expected and what happens. Something was intended to have a particular result has a different... Do you see the pattern here? A state of affairs is contrary to what one expects and is amusing. So in all these definitions, you've got what was supposed to happen and what actually happens and why it's interesting that they're different. Okay? So if you've got a handle on that, then all we need to do is go into the poem, find some things that were supposed to be one way but are actually another way, and make a point about them. 6 marks here. Well, you can very clearly see if you do all that stuff and give evidence, you're easily going to get 3 marks for doing one of those things. So we're going to need 2 of those points. Does that make sense? I talk about this a lot, the way you look at marks, and you can see there's a lot of answer space here. That doesn't mean that you need to fill it. It's just because some people will do this more succinctly, more briefly. Some people will waffle on a bit, and the question setter doesn't want to be unfair to people who end up waffling a bit and crossing stuff out. So with a bit of extra space, it doesn't mean you have to fill it in this case, okay? And I think in the context, you should be able to work that out as well. Right. So things are expected that turned out differently, okay? God, I'm waffling, aren't I? I met a traveller. He said this, okay? There's no irony there. And we're told all about this broken statue, and as yet there's nothing that seems particularly ironic. And then we get to the description on the pedestal, okay? And we read that he said he had carved all this time ago, "My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair." No doubt in that voice. And now it's ironic because he expected that people would look at his works and go, "Wow, you are the greatest." And instead, they're looking and going, "Is that all that's left of you?" Okay, now, I'm being a bit silly about it because it's late and, but that kind of just looking at things as they're really ordinary and you can even be a little bit silly about them is how you get into the thought process, and now we have to find a way to communicate it. Before we do communicate it, let's think what our second point might be, actually. I would be writing some notes next to the poem here to help me remember my ideas. I'm not doing that because there is no space for me to do so because of the way I've chopped it into this window. But just bear in mind, I'll be writing some marginal notes to record my ideas. Okay. Right. What would be a second point? So we got that sort of the overall point, right? That he thought this would be grand, but in fact, just this blah blah works. Well, where else can we see an expectation where this king has tried to achieve something which they have not achieved, let's say? Look at the expression on their face. They've got a frown, a wrinkled lip, and a sneer of cold command. Okay, command, so their expression, a sneer, you know what a sneer is, right? So they were imagining themselves up on the statue, this massive stone head, looking down on everybody below. And the people would look up and go, "Wow, you are a great king, I will do as you say." And so when they sort of issue a law or a decree or something, people would then think, "I must do what this says because, wow, this person is scary. I mean, if you've seen their statue, I mean, you don't want to mess with that guy," or something like that. But in fact, this sneer of cold command is now on a mostly buried, broken face. lying in the sand of the desert, which is empty. So there is terrific irony there. The statue was supposed to sneer down on people and terrify them. Instead, this traveller, who is so unimportant they don't even get a name in this poem, is looking down on the face and maybe nudging it with their toe, we can imagine. So that's big irony. Okay, two big ironies here. One is one is that the king, Ozymandias, wanted people to despair, to be amazed and horrified by the awesomeness of what he'd made, whereas in fact, there's nothing left apart from a few bits of broken statue. That's one bit of irony. And the other thing is that he was going to be sneering down on people, but in fact the traveller is looking down on him. Okay, simple. So we need to communicate those ideas clearly and simply. I've just done that. So I basically need to write down what I just said without the slang and just with some clear quotations. Because if you see something like this, that should be a clear instruction to provide short quotations in your answer. You can interpret support with evidence in other ways. You could give examples that don't quote, I suppose. You could include massive quotations that basically copy out half the poem. These aren't bad things to do. What you need to do is give short, clear quotations as part of your points, and then you'll get these marks easily. Right, so let's do it. How about that? Me doing something rather than just talking about it endlessly. Incredible. Hard to believe, isn't it? Well, I haven't done it. I haven't started writing. So, first irony is the one we were talking about with the inscription. So, Ozymandias, not putting that in inverted commas because it's the name of the person, not of the poem, even though it's both. Ozymandias wanted, we can use the past tense because we are talking about the figure and what they wanted in the past. If we're talking about the poem, we'd use the present tense, we say once, or the poet. Subtle distinction, but it's not that important, don't worry. Ozymandias wanted people to, first quote, to despair at his amazing works. Look on my, behold my works, ye mighty, in despair. Look on my works, ye mighty, in despair. That's the one. Ozymandias wanted people to despair at his amazing works, but now there are no works. Sorry about my handwriting. I've got bad handwriting. It's especially difficult to write on a slippery tablet, kind of partly in the air. But it's amazing works. But now there are no works apart. The other thing is I can't really rest my hand on it while I write because I end up sliding the screen everywhere. Anyway, excuses. But now there are no works apart from his broken statue bearing, part of the game here is decipher what I've written, right? Bearing this very message. Okay, so he wanted people to despair. That's what was expected at the amazing works, but now there aren't any apart from this broken statue with this very message. Okay, I'm just going to add a summary sentence. He seems ridiculous and vain. Now, I think you might get away without that explanation because it's kind of, you've probably done it for the 3 marks anyway, but a good rule for exams, make sure. Okay, don't make sure of the marks by writing loads of extra sentences and wasting time. Do make sure of the marks by, if there's another point you can chuck it in quickly, just to round off your point and make absolutely sure that there is no way even the meanest examiner who has hated you for your entire life could find a way to take a mark away from you. Okay, onwards. We've got so much space here that I'm actually going to start a new paragraph for my second point, because why not? Okay, but now there are no works apart from this broken statue. His broken statue bearing this very message. He seems ridiculous and vain. Definite irony there. Clearly matches what we were expecting. Okay, now we've got the sneering point, which I actually like more because it's a bit more detailed, a bit more specific. Let's take a moment to look at some of the comments here. What have you got here? Yes, Yatharth or Yatarth, I'm not sure, but anyway, your point is great. Very much, I think, kind of what I'm saying, but in different words, and that's good in itself because it shows you've understood. The narrator tells us that the maker of the pedestal was meant to design it in a way that would impose on the public that he had superiority over them. Yeah, the maker of the statue, right? The pedestal is just the bottom bits, but same difference. But as a result, the person was looking at dead ruins. Yeah, same kind of thing I'm saying. Roblox says, thank you for this, and you really helped me. That's wonderful, thank you. You are the best. I wouldn't go that far, but I appreciate the compliment. Thank you, it's very kind. Big list of countries, all of which are in East Asia. Some of those countries I would categorize as being Central Asia, talking about sort of Kyrgyzstan and so on, but depends how you look at it, I guess. I mean, what is East? What is East? What is Centre? Relative to what? Why do we talk about the West? West of what? So yeah, anyway, I don't know why you're talking about that, but interesting little, geopolitical sideline. Okay, let's go back to me writing stuff. Why don't we do that? I do enjoy watching your comments. Right, Ozymandias, yeah, he seemed to expect that his statue, I'm definitely just making this up, I definitely haven't got a few quick scribbled notes here to remind me what I want to say. Imagine I'd waffle if I didn't. So yeah, Ozymandias, he seems to, I'll say he, because we know who he is. He also seemed to expect... No, he also seemed, let's be accurate here with our tense, he seemed, we don't know what he seemed like, we weren't there. He also seems, this is why precise tenses are a beautiful thing in English. He also seems to, wait for it, to have expected. Well-rounded tense, yes. The excitement. This is what I live for. He also seems to have expected that his statue would sneer, that's our key quote here. My handwriting is particularly bad today. I think it's all the coffee I drank before this lesson. I only got 6 hours sleep last night, which is not very much for me. And so the only way I'm sort of not going is constant caffeine. Expected that his statue would sneer down. Down. Sounds like I'm trying to write some kind of weird Welsh. Apologies to any Welsh viewers. I don't really think your language sounds like Dwan, just a bit. His statue would sneer down upon terrified observers. Yeah, how's that? What? That's just illegible even to me. Terrified. Terrified. Honestly, that's what it says. Just believe me. Terrified observers, or let's use a semicolon just to be pretentious. Yet now a traveller. And this, I think, is actually quite an important point, because you would expect characters in poems to be named, to know who they are, but the fact they're not, I think, is interesting. What people choose not to do can often be very artistically revealing. Why does Picasso sometimes choose not to paint an identifiable face? There must be a reason behind that, which might be more interesting than why he does do certain things. Why am I talking about Picasso? I think it's because his poems about things broken up, and so on. That's why. Anyway. They're not even the most interesting Picassos. God, now who is being pretentious? Yet now, it was me before, so it's still me being pretentious. What am I on about? It's the coffee, sorry. Yet now a traveller, not important enough, not even important enough to be named. I'm not even important enough to write words that people can read, not even important enough, or maybe I'm so important I don't need to write words you can read. Have you considered that? Not even important enough to be named. Not even important enough to be named. What am I doing? To be named. Yeah, say in the poem, actually. Just be clear what's going on. I told you if I lean on this, it moves. That's this poem. I'm really honestly trying to write the word poem. To be named in the poem. Looks down at his face. Okay? He also seems to have expected that his statue would sneer down upon terrified... What? No. This is why you should always reread your answers. Always. Because even I, because I'm so great now, but look, I teach this stuff, even I have just missed out a word. Upon terrified people, upon what do you call people who look at something? Observers or viewers, observers. Slight difference, a viewer might watch something that's kind of static, that's passive. An observer is likely to be watching something in progress, although there are exceptions because you've got a television viewer, not a television observer. I suppose observing also carries an implication that you're watching to see what happens because there is uncertainty about it, whereas a TV, no, it doesn't really match it. Why am I talking about this even? I don't know. Yeah, you normally say observers for events unless it's TV or something. Sneer down upon terrified observers. Yet now a traveller, not even important enough to be named in the poem, looks down at his face. Thank you very much. Okay, I think that's pretty decent. Let's go through the whole answer. So look at how we've covered what's expected and what's actually happened and why it's ironic. And we've done that cleanly with examples for 2 points. It's as simple as that once you've worked out that that's what the question requires. Ozymandias wanted people to despair at his amazing works, but now there are no works apart from his broken statue bearing this very message. He seems ridiculous and vain. He also seems to have expected that his statue would sneer down upon terrified observers. Yet now a traveller, not even important enough to be named in the poem, looks down at his face. Okay, clearly irony. Thank you, Summer, for very kindly saying that I'm really helping you. I'm definitely not just confusing you. Well, I really hope I'm not. Thank you for your support and your kind comment. And that's how you do it. 2 really difficult questions that we've dealt with, and thank you for your fantastic comments. Maha, what have you got to say? Ozymandias thinks he is a god and the greatest thing alive, yet he lays so low in the sand-covered ground. He lies so low, careful. Irony is like me saying Norwich will beat Manchester City, and it happens. That's coincidence, not quite irony. Yeah, irony might be that Manchester City has beaten Norwich every time for the last 10 years, and then finally, for the very first time, you actually place a bet on Manchester City beating Norwich, and that very time Norwich beat Manchester City. That would be kind of ironic, I suppose. Not the greatest example, but yeah, it's difficult irony. It's a really difficult concept to pin down, actually. Strawberry Clouds is thanking me. Thank you, Strawberry Clouds, for thanking me. Good bit of mutual backslapping. Enough of this. Right. I hope that was useful. Let's go on to the tip of the week. I'm saying this slowly because I've forgotten what I was going to say for the tip of the week. What was I going to say? Oh, maybe I don't have a tip this week. I did have a tip, but I've forgotten. Oh yeah, I know what it was. A self-promoting tip, but kind of useful. I'm in the middle of doing a series of videos on the ISEB pretest, which is a computer 11 plus test that is used by a lot of independent schools. And my tip of the week was to actually go and have a look at it. The first video was published last Saturday in the channel. Next one's coming out this Saturday. There are going to be 4 in total, one for each part of the test. The reason I'm saying it here is that just on the channel, I think only independent school people might come across it because it's an independent school test. I'm mentioning it now because it's really similar to a lot of grammar school tests that you do on paper, and the questions are really similar, the way of thinking is really similar, the time considerations are really similar. So anyone who's doing a multiple choice test, whether it's on a computer, whether it's on paper, whether it's for a grammar school, whether it's for an independent school, go and have a look at my ISEB pretest videos. You can see the covers have got pictures of like cartoon me looking at a computer, because I think you might find them really useful. I hope so anyway. That was my tip of the week. Have a look at those. Let's quickly take a few questions. Why don't we? I was going to say, by the way, please remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Why aren't you subscribed to my channel, people? You probably are. You probably all are. But if you aren't, please subscribe and please click the bell button so you get, for example, a notification when I'm about to go live so you don't forget. That's the kind of thing you get when you've clicked the bell. Yeah, and please tell your friends about this channel. I said that already. It's really useful. Right, that's enough waffle. What have we got here? What was your 11 plus score? Did you pass? A few people asked me about this. I honestly don't know whether I sat the 11 plus, which sounds really funny, but I carried on from a junior school to a senior school, and I just can't remember whether I had to take an exam or not. So I really have no idea what my 11 plus score was. Is the 11 plus, would you do the test online and online or on paper? I've just actually dealt with that, haven't I, by saying you could be either depending on the kind of 11 plus that you do. Most 11 plus tests are done on paper, but increasingly quite a lot of schools, independent schools, use a pre-test, and some of them actually use it as their main test, which is done on a computer, and there are a couple of different competing pre-tests that are out there. What is the core skill of NVR? Really good question, actually. Watch my NVR videos, by the way. There's a playlist on them in the channel. If you want to find my playlists, go to the Easy 11 Plus homepage, and the easiest way to go to the Easy 11 Plus homepage is to type Easy 11 Plus into the search box of YouTube, and that will take you to the 11 Plus homepage. Playlist for NVR. To answer your question, rather than promote my channel, what, me? Help? Rather than promote? Goodness me. The key skill is breaking things down. So if you're looking at which is the next picture in the sequence, there are probably going to be several things going on in the sequence of pictures that would lead to it. And if you just look at it to say, this is a picture, how does this picture change, and look at it as a whole, you won't get it. If you say, well, this bit moves around clockwise a quarter at a time. This bit of the picture keeps reflecting. This bit of the picture gains a side each time, and if you can break it down and see those separate things, you'll be able to start eliminating things and start finding the right answer. So being able to break things down into their constituent units is the key skill for NVR. Thank you for an excellent question. How do you join the ISEB pretest? If you apply to schools that require it, they will arrange for you to sit it at your current school normally. So basically you apply to a school, and if that school needs that test, then they will help you to set it up, or they'll just set it up for you. Can you help me with this maths question? No, sorry, English lesson. I'm so harsh. But if there's a particular kind of question you want me to cover, then write it in the comments. Don't write it in these comments, I'm not going to remember. Write it in the main comments under the video. Say, I would really like it if you did a video on how to make a chicken explode, and then maybe if that's an 11 plus topic, then I might be able to do a video on it, because I do look for things that people want. Hint, that is not an 11 plus topic. Don't make chickens explode, it'd be very unkind, and they wouldn't be much use to you afterwards. I doubt you could even eat them. How do you know all this? It's really complicated. Because I have a vast brain. It's not that complicated. It's just exam skills and reading skills, and you learn them through reading and doing exams. I don't think it's that bad, and I don't think the fact I can do these 11 plus lessons says anything particularly fantastic about me. How do I generate ideas for answering questions? Okay, that's a great question. Questions like the one today. That's a question from Rahul. I'm unable to think like you just did. Yeah, sure. Okay, fine. Because I've been practicing this for a long time, and that's like, you know the way it is. You see people who've been practicing a skill for years and years and years, and then you see them doing it. It looks like they're kind of doing some magic trick, but it's not. It's just practice. And so the same applies to you. You just need to practice. How do you do it? Well, what did I do? I went back to the basic meaning. So I said, okay, just what is happening here? So for example, nothing beside remains. What is the, who is talking? The traveller. And nothing, so nothing apart from what remains. So I remind myself. And I say, okay, what else is there? Just the empty desert. So I'm thinking about the scene and then getting myself into it that way. And then why would you say that? Well, you'd say that because you've run out of things to say. Okay, so why does the poet want to emphasize that the traveller's run out of things to say? Because this is such a ridiculous and sort of pathetic scene. There were just a few bits of statue and nothing else of this boastful king. And now I'm getting into an answer suddenly, just because I'm in simple terms saying, what does this mean? Why are they saying it? What does it make me think about? And so I start to get into an answer just by looking at it really simply. Just like if it's like being the kind of it's like being a kind of simpleton Sherlock Holmes. There's nothing that sophisticated, but you're just looking at, you know, Sherlock Holmes will notice the really simple thing in the room that's been there and anyone could have seen, but nobody else has really noticed. So he'll notice that the body has got a tan line in a weird place, and then deduce from that where they've been, and that will help him to solve the thing. And like a tan line on the body is a really obvious thing, but no one else has noticed it because it was sort of too obvious. And that's what we do. We just look at the simple thing that's there. We say, why is it there? What does it mean? Why is that interesting? And that's sort of what happens with all these kinds of questions. I could say more about that, but I think that's a good starting point. Fuzaini likes my tutoring, thank you. I'm going to stop in a second because we've done this plenty long enough for a lesson. People saying, have I made a colon video? I didn't find one. And no, I haven't done anything specifically about colons, semicolons, but my video about punctuation, which is mainly about full stops and commas, because that is the most important aspect of punctuation, does also, I think, include placing at least one colon. So you can have a look at that. Anyone who hasn't watched that video, by the way, I think that is one of my most important videos for many people, how to do simple punctuation well and reliably. Look at my video on punctuation. I'm going to wrap it up there. It's been wonderful to have you here. And so as I always do in these things, I'm going to say if you're watching this live, this will be meaningless, but if you're re-watching it after a day or two or later, you will see a video pop up here, because that's the video that I recommend you watch next. It might be the punctuation video or it might not. I don't know. I'll have to think about it. It's been fantastic to have you here. Please tell your friends about this channel. Please like and subscribe. But yeah, mainly tell your friends. Invite your school friends. Tell them there's this thing. You do it on a Tuesday evening. There's also a video on a Saturday morning. And yeah, it's fantastic. It teaches you how to do the 11 plus. What wouldn't you love about that after school? I don't know. I can think of a few things. Anyway, see you again next Tuesday evening and on Saturday.